From London, this is the Standard Podcast, and I'm Mark Blunden. President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump have both secured their party's nominations to seal the first White House election rematch in almost 70 years. Both candidates dominated Tuesday's primaries in swing state Georgia, deep red Mississippi and Democratic-leaning Washington state. The results mean the first carbon copy contest between two previous candidates since 1956.
Now that President Biden and former President Donald Trump have clinched the nominations of the Democratic and Republican Party, respectively, many people are looking back through American history to see if there are examples that are similar to this, and there are not very many.
That's Professor Cal Gilson, a political science expert at Southern Methodist University, speaking to the Associated Press.
In the most recent cases, we've had candidates that defeat their challenger twice. Eisenhower in the 1950s is a great example of that. He ran twice against the widely respected Governor Adlai Stevenson, beat him soundly both times because he was the Supreme Commander, Allied Forces Europe in World War II. And so we'll go through a particular example of a second contest between two men. This may be the least uplifting.
History will also be made with a contest between the two oldest candidates, including one who could potentially be in jail by November. And polls show most Americans are unhappy with the choice on offer. It means the bizarre spectacle of Trump selected as Republican nominee for a third time, fighting myriad criminal court cases while on the campaign trail. And both Biden, 81, and Trump, 77, are already winding up the rhetoric.
I can tell you a lot about a person who he keeps company with. And yesterday he was hosting at his club Viktor Orban, who says he doesn't think democracy works. Call him a fantastic leader. When he says he wants to be a dictator, I believe him. Folks, it's not hyperbole to suggest our freedoms are literally on the ballot this November.
If you're a disillusioned Democrat, of which there are many today, I extend an open hand, an open invitation, and I ask you to join us on the noble quest of saving our country. Saving our country. Together we will turn the page forever on the miserable nightmare of the Biden presidency.
The outcome of Tuesday's state contests was not in doubt, with neither Biden nor Trump facing major opposition following the withdrawal of the last serious Republican challenger, Nikki Haley. So let's examine the issues set to frame this blockbuster 2024 race for the White House with the Evening Standard's deputy political editor, Jitendra Joshi. Jit, a huge 24 hours in American politics. What's the latest you're reporting for The Splash in Wednesday's newspaper?
Joe Biden and Donald Trump, who bitterly faced off in the 2020 presidential election, are preparing for a rematch in November. They've both been running to secure their respective party nominations. So in the US, if you want to be a serious contender, at least, you've got to win either the Democratic or Republican party nomination first. And that's the battle that's been playing out over recent weeks. Joe Biden for the Democrats, Donald Trump for the Republicans. And you need to reach a winning line in terms of the number of delegates that you amass who will then vote for you at each of the parties' conventions in July and August. Those are like a massive jamboree of the great and the good and the great unwashed of both the parties. They're kind of similar to our party conferences that we have every summer, but being American, they're just massive in scale, and they're actually only every 4 years to coincide with the presidential elections when it's time to choose those nominees.
And where are we at in those races?
As of this morning, we can say for certain that both Trump and Biden have the required number of delegates each one of them needs to win the nominations come the conventions in the summer. So Biden needed 1,968 delegates. He's across that finishing line. He's got over 2,000. And Trump needed 1,215, and he's just gone over that line as well after the three latest state primaries yesterday. Those were held in Georgia, Mississippi, and Washington state.
And we'd be forgiven a sense of deja vu. How's the campaign different this time around?
It's not just us feeling a strong sense of deja vu. More importantly, it's American voters are feeling that also, and they're not very happy about it, to be honest. All the polls show that people generally are feeling fairly fed up over the choice that they're going to have to contend with come the election on November the 5th. Partly that's down to age. Biden is 81 and Trump is 77. And that's not a sort of matchup that many Americans are particularly happy at having to choose between. Arguably, both of them are showing their age. Biden, in particular, has been under a pretty harsh gaze for various verbal gaffes and memory lapses. But Trump also is no spring chicken at 77, and he's been tripping up also on his own side, including getting his wife Melania's name wrong. So there's that. But it's not just that American voters are feeling particularly ageist. It's also that a lot of people would hope that we could have moved past now the bitter rancor that we saw in 2020 between these two aging men. And instead, it seems we're going to have to replay a lot of those old themes of looking back rather than looking forward.
And we've got this bizarre situation of Trump's myriad court cases. How is this all possibly going to work?
It's possibly not going to work if he ends up in jail on one of the 91 charges in 4 criminal cases that he's facing. But we live in strange times, and his voters are famously loyal, and there's every chance that should Mr. Trump end up convicted and even jailed, he would still fight the election and still be able to count on the support of millions of people, millions of diehard Republicans who flock to his MAGA brand. What his lawyers are trying to do and working overtime to try and achieve is to get these court cases pushed back as far as possible, and certainly beyond the November election. 2 of the cases are federal cases. That means should he get re-elected to the White House, Trump could be in a position as the sitting president of directly intervening and ordering federal prosecutors to stop the cases already been convicted, or somehow trying to pardon himself. Not for the first time that under Trump, that would take us into very wild and unknown territory where it comes to respect for constitutional norms.
Let's go to the ads coming up. It's the economy stupid, or is it? The other hot button issues also set to dominate the campaign trail. Why not hit follow in the meantime and give us a rating? Welcome back. Jit, what's your view on why the Republicans weren't able to get what might be described as a unity candidate over the line?
Because arguably Trump is the unity candidate, at least in terms of the majority of people who tend to vote in these primary contests. In most states, you have to be registered for one or other party in order to take part in the primary elections. And that means that it's really just the devoted few who can keep up the registration, who can be bothered to turn out on election nights and volunteer for the party and so on. They're the ones who are the distillation of the Trump support base, really. And ever since he first ran in 2016, he's been steadily taking over the party, remodeling it in his image to the extent that more mainstream Republicans are running scared of the support he can count on, the ways in which he can exploit perceived disloyalty against himself by getting donors and getting media to turn on people who are disloyal to him. And that's driven a lot of mainstream Republicans out.
Biden seemed a bit reinvigorated of late, and he's been doing reasonably well on the economy, right?
The economy is doing reasonably well. The problem Biden faces is that he's not really getting any credit for that, because much like here in Britain, even if the signs are starting to perk up in some of the data, people aren't feeling that. They're still contending with high interest rates, with reasonably high inflation. Their wages aren't going up so much. It's exactly the same scenario that people are facing over here. That's partly the problem Biden faces. His approval ratings are worryingly low for an incumbent president who's battling what's likely to be a very close election. And there are other issues at play for hardcore Democrats, young Palestinians, or people generally who just really want to see peace in the Middle East. There's a lot of disquiet at the administration's support for Israel, albeit Biden has started to row back a little bit, has started to show a slightly harsher face to the Israeli government of late, perhaps in part because he realises he needs to keep his own voters on side.
And in addition to the economic challenges, what are the other hot-button issues?
Another one which Trump is making hay over is the millions of people who've been crossing the US-Mexico border illegally. That's really emerged as a pretty hot-button issue for a lot of voters, and not just Trump's sort of Republican MAGA base. A lot of Americans generally are feeling anxious about this. And you can see parallels in the UK with how the Conservatives have been trying to deal with the issue of migrants crossing the channel on small boats. There's a general sense of who's in charge here, who's got a grip on the borders.
Finally, it's a big hypothetical, but I'd be interested in your thoughts on how a potential future Starmer administration might work with Biden or Trump. Presumably, Labour are going to be wargaming that now on foreign policy, even in these early stages.
You better believe it. I mean, there is no single more important relationship, of course, for any UK government than the so-called special relationship across the Atlantic. And in public, at least, Labour people are studiously maintaining neutrality and saying they're ready to work with whoever wins the election. They have to say that, of course. But there is no doubt there is a congruence between the two centre-left parties, between Labour and the Democrats. There's a lot of interplay between people sort of going from one side to the other to help out, to learn from the other's experiences. And there's no doubt in my mind that Keir Starmer and his front bench team would be a whole lot happier to see Joe Biden get back in the White House. Equally, on the other side, there are mutterings from some on the Conservative side that they wouldn't be all that unhappy at seeing Trump get back in.
There's much more on this story in the Evening Standard newspaper and online at standard.co.uk. We're back on Thursday at 4 p.m.